The morning air at Naval Air Station Oceana carried the distinctive mixture of jet fuel and salt spray that characterized carrier-based aviation facilities where the world's most sophisticated fighter aircraft prepared for missions that demanded absolute precision from pilots who understood that naval aviation represented the pinnacle of military flight operations under conditions that challenged even the most experienced aviators. Aviation electronics technician First Class Chen moved through the aircraft maintenance hangar with a methodical precision that distinguished naval aviation personnel who recognized that proper equipment maintenance could determine mission success and pilot survival during combat operations where mechanical failure meant certain death in hostile environments thousands of miles from friendly territory. The squadron's flight operations center buzzed with pre-flight coordination as pilots reviewed weather reports and mission briefings for training sorties scheduled throughout the volatile Atlantic coast region, where rapidly changing meteorological conditions created flight challenges that tested every aspect of pilot training and aircraft performance capabilities under demanding operational parameters. But when Lieutenant Commander Jake Stevens noticed her careful inspection of advanced flight control systems, and the detailed attention she paid to cockpit instrumentation that exceeded standard maintenance technician requirements, he dismissed her thoroughness as typical enlisted personnel overcaution rather than recognizing the systematic flight preparation that characterized personnel with advanced pilot training and specialized aviation experience that had been strategically concealed within routine maintenance assignment structures. His casual comment about technicians who think they understand flying reflected institutional assumptions about aviation support roles that would be shattered when weather reality demanded capabilities that exceeded conventional pilot training and revealed specialized competencies that had been carefully hidden behind layers of operational security and strategic assignment planning. From which naval aviation facility around the world are you following this storm flying story today? If you appreciate narratives that explore advanced flight operations and the concealed aviation expertise within specialized pilot databases, consider subscribing for more content that reveals the exceptional aviators who operate with hidden capabilities within naval aviation environments. Naval Air Station Oceana occupied 5,700 acres of strategically positioned territory along Virginia's Atlantic coastline. Its carrier aviation facilities and advanced flight training centers representing the most sophisticated aviation environment, supporting American naval operations through integrated flight systems and cutting-edge pilot training protocols that enabled operation of complex carrier-based aircraft under conditions that exceeded civilian aviation capabilities by orders of magnitude. The installation served as the primary training coordination hub for naval aviation operations, combining advanced flight simulation technology, specialized pilot training systems, and innovative aviation protocols that provided unprecedented operational readiness for naval aviators operating from aircraft carriers in high-threat environments where conventional flight training could not address the complexity of modern carrier-based aviation operations. Located within multiple security perimeters, the base had been constructed with specialized aviation systems and flight operation isolation capabilities designed to maintain aviation effectiveness even during severe weather conditions that grounded conventional aircraft and challenged standard naval aviation protocols. The base aviation architecture incorporated decades of advancement in naval flight operations and carrier aviation methodology, including underground flight simulation processing centers, aviation weather protection systems, and automated flight coordination algorithms that could provide advanced flight support for dozens of aircraft simultaneously without compromising operational effectiveness when weather requirements demanded immediate aviation response under dangerous meteorological conditions. Advanced flight systems analyzed weather data from hundreds of atmospheric monitoring stations simultaneously, creating comprehensive meteorological profiles that tracked weather pattern development while distinguishing between conventional storm systems and extreme weather events that indicated atmospheric conditions requiring modified flight approaches and enhanced aviation safety protocols throughout naval aviation operations. Aviation electronics technician First Class Chen ascended from the Flight Operations Coordination Station, carrying routine aircraft maintenance documentation and aviation systems protocol modifications, her security clearance providing access to aviation areas that few personnel were authorized to enter during standard naval aviation assignments. Though her current assignment to routine aircraft maintenance seemed inconsistent with the extensive flight evaluation and specialized aviation screening required for her clearance level and pilot background that remained classified above conventional personnel authorization levels. The screening process for her current position had required 42 months of federal investigation that examined every aspect of her aviation history and flight competencies. Though investigators had encountered classified files that remained sealed at classification levels exceeding their authorization to review or discuss with conventional naval aviation personnel throughout the investigation process. At 29 years old, she possessed specialized training from the Naval Test Pilot School's Advanced Flight Operations program, having completed classified coursework in extreme weather aviation, advanced carrier flight operations, and experimental pilot performance enhancement before her assignment to conventional aircraft maintenance following mission requirements that demanded complete capability concealment and operational invisibility within routine naval aviation environments that protected her specialized flight training from potential enemy intelligence gathering. Her official service record listed standard aviation electronics specialization and conventional assignment history. Though these official designations concealed advanced pilot expertise and flight operations experience that had been classified following mission requirements and strategic decisions that eliminated flight programs deemed too sophisticated for standard military aviation documentation and public oversight regarding advanced pilot capabilities. Her educational background included instruction at flight training institutions whose existence was compartmentalized beyond standard naval aviation oversight, where defense contractors and aviation scientists developed methodologies that pushed the boundaries of human flight performance and aviation capability enhancement through advanced training protocols that exceeded conventional flight school capabilities and prepared pilots for aviation scenarios that civilian flight training could never address. The program she had completed involved theoretical flight integration, advanced aviation psychology, and experimental human aircraft interface systems that prepared personnel for flight scenarios that conventional military pilot training could not address adequately or provide sufficient aviation preparation for extreme weather operations and carrier-based flight operations under combat conditions. Her instructors had included test pilots and aviation specialists whose experience encompassed decades of classified research into military applications of advanced flight capabilities and strategic aviation management technologies that exceeded standard naval aviation training protocols. The decision to accept assignment to conventional aircraft maintenance rather than specialized flight operations had been influenced by operational requirements and mission parameters that demanded her advanced aviation capabilities remain available for activation on flight operations that required her specific pilot expertise and aviation knowledge, while maintaining complete operational invisibility within routine naval aviation environments that protected advanced flight training programs from enemy intelligence assessment. Her presence within conventional military aviation units provided flight operation security and aviation oversight, while her advanced pilot background remained available for deployment on operations that required her specialized aviation capabilities and flight operations experience under extreme conditions that exceeded standard naval aviation protocols and pilot training requirements. Lieutenant Commander Jake Stevens supervised the morning aviation briefing with authority gained through 14 years of naval flight service and conventional education in carrier aviation management. His experience encompassing standard naval flight operations and aviation coordination that maintained American flight effectiveness within carrier aviation environments through traditional flight protocols and established aviation systems that operated within conventional naval aviation frameworks. His background included flight command assignments throughout conventional carrier operations and liaison duties with aviation organizations that coordinated standard naval flight activities and basic aviation management protocols that remained within established naval aviation boundaries and conventional flight training frameworks throughout his aviation career progression. The lieutenant commander's naval aviation career had followed conventional pathways from basic flight training to carrier aviation coordination. including standard assignments with aviation organizations and carrier commands that managed routine naval flight operations and basic aviation management activities that remained within traditional military aviation boundaries and conventional flight frameworks that characterized standard naval aviation career development. His progression from tactical flight operations to strategic aviation coordination had been driven by institutional requirements for experienced flight officers who could manage standard carrier aviation activities and maintain American aviation leadership within established naval aviation structures that prioritized conventional flight safety and standard operational protocols. Around the Naval Aviation Briefing Table sat representatives from naval air forces, carrier aviation groups, regional aviation allies, and various flight training contractors, each contributing standard expertise to aviation coordination and flight management procedures that maintained aviation effectiveness against conventional weather capabilities and standard flight operation challenges that remained within established naval aviation parameters. The assembled group represented decades of collective experience in naval aviation operations, flight coordination, and aviation management that supported flight effectiveness against traditional weather systems and established aviation methodologies that characterized routine naval flight operations throughout multiple operational environments and aviation deployment scenarios. Major Lisa Rodriguez, the flight coordination officer responsible for carrier aviation communication and naval flight protocol management, possessed 16 years of experience in standard naval aviation systems and held security clearances that provided access to routine intelligence regarding aviation capabilities and flight management methodologies that supported carrier aviation operational effectiveness throughout standard naval aviation operations. Her aviation background included conventional training in naval flight operations, basic aviation coordination, and standard flight evaluation procedures that enabled management of routine carrier aviation communication and coordination of appropriate flight responses and aviation protocol compliance that maintain naval aviation effectiveness within established operational parameters. Major Rodriguez's expertise encompassed conventional coordination between theoretical naval aviation and practical flight requirements, translating standard aviation protocols into functional coordination systems that maintain flight effectiveness while ensuring readiness for conventional weather threats that remained within established aviation capabilities and flight management frameworks that characterized standard naval aviation operations. Her role required routine evaluation of aviation reports, flight assessments, and aviation capability estimates to ensure adequate flight preparations for standard weather threats and established aviation challenges that naval aviation personnel encountered during routine carrier-based operations throughout various operational environments and flight deployment scenarios. The aviation coordination team under Rodriguez's management represented conventionally selected aviation personnel recruited from standard flight contractors and naval aviation institutions, each bringing routine aviation knowledge to the basic challenge of maintaining flight effectiveness against established weather capabilities while supporting standard aviation advantages that preserved American flight leadership within conventional naval aviation frameworks that prioritized flight safety and operational effectiveness. Their work followed established aviation protocols, and their coordination decisions supported routine aviation communication capabilities and standard response procedures that protected flight interests and maintained operational aviation effectiveness throughout naval aviation facilities and carrier-based operations under standard weather conditions and conventional flight operational parameters. Lieutenant Commander David Park, the weather aviation officer responsible for flight weather communication and aviation meteorology coordination management, possessed extensive experience in standard naval aviation operations and weather management that enabled coordination and management of routine flight weather communication through conventional monitoring networks and basic meteorological analysis procedures that remained within standard military aviation capabilities and established weather assessment protocols. His understanding of aviation weather technology encompassed conventional flight weather management systems and established meteorological technologies that operated within traditional boundaries of current weather understanding and provided capabilities that met standard naval aviation equipment and procedural requirements for flight operations under routine weather conditions. The weather commander's background included conventional training in aviation meteorology, standard weather processing, and established coordination methodologies that enabled management of routine weather management and flight weather communication that aviation forces employed through conventional screening systems and standard operational procedures that maintained flight safety. His responsibility for weather coordination required routine technological maintenance and conventional strategic thinking that managed standard flight weather cooperation while maintaining coordination effectiveness for established aviation weather threats and conventional meteorological challenges that characterized naval aviation operations throughout various weather environments and seasonal operational conditions. Lieutenant Commander, overnight meteorological analysis indicates severe weather system development with advanced storm capabilities that approach the limits of our current weather assessment models and established flight operation parameters, Major Rodriguez reported, her voice carrying professional precision that characterized standard aviation weather evaluation and conventional meteorological assessment procedures throughout naval aviation weather monitoring operations. Weather intelligence sources indicate storm system utilization of severe meteorological patterns with extreme weather capabilities that challenge our existing flight protocols and standard aviation weather management measures. With technical meteorological details available through routine weather channels and conventional aviation weather assessment procedures that monitor storm development and flight safety parameters. Her assessment reflected standard evolution of weather threats that characterized conventional aviation coordination, where severe weather systems utilized extreme meteorological patterns and dangerous conditions designed to challenge basic naval aviation flight systems through atmospheric vulnerabilities that could be addressed through routine flight adjustments and established weather response procedures that maintained aviation safety. The weather intelligence indicated conventional storm advancement that required standard aviation weather measures and routine protocol updates to maintain flight effectiveness and aviation weather management throughout naval aviation installations and flight operation facilities during severe weather conditions that challenged standard flight safety protocols. The current weather assessment represented routine meteorological analysis that had identified standard patterns indicating severe storm system development and established weather pattern intensification that operated within extreme naval aviation weather capabilities but remained manageable through enhanced flight protocols. Weather intelligence. Sources had reported routine storm development activities and standard intensification processes that indicated conventional severe weather preparation that remained within established naval aviation weather planning assumptions and standard meteorological parameters that naval aviation weather management systems could address through enhanced flight safety protocols. Major, we've enhanced our aviation weather sensitivity and implemented advanced flight weather verification procedures designed to manage severe weather activities and established storm management technologies that weather systems employ through extreme atmospheric methods, Lieutenant Commander Park explained. His report reflecting systematic approach to weather adaptation that balanced flight coordination capabilities with operational limitations of current naval aviation weather cooperation, and established meteorological flight systems throughout naval aviation weather management operations. Our current flight capabilities provide adequate protection against severe weather activities and extreme storm challenges, maintaining flight effectiveness through established naval aviation weather cooperation and routine meteorological coordination throughout aviation weather facilities and flight operations under enhanced weather safety protocols. His analysis addressed fundamental requirements for standard naval aviation weather coordination, where conventional advancement supported routine meteorological management, while weather systems utilized extreme atmospheric countermeasures that operated within existing naval aviation weather advantages and standard meteorological frameworks that characterized naval aviation weather operations. The balance between current capabilities and severe weather threats required routine maintenance and standard planning that managed established meteorological coordination through conventional protocols and established naval aviation weather frameworks that prioritized flight safety during severe weather conditions and extreme atmospheric events. The weather coordination measures implemented by Park's meteorological team represented standard naval aviation weather cooperation technology that incorporated conventional lessons learned from established naval aviation weather operations and routine meteorological management experience throughout naval aviation weather operations under various atmospheric conditions. Standard meteorological processing, routine weather analysis, and conventional coordination systems provided capabilities that maintained weather coordination accuracy while supporting operational efficiency for established naval aviation operations and routine flight weather management. While severe weather systems continued utilizing extreme atmospheric technologies that operated within American aviation weather capabilities and established meteorological management measures that characterized naval aviation weather operations. Lieutenant Commander Park, what specific capabilities do our current aviation weather systems provide for managing the severe weather threats described in routine meteorological assessments and standard flight weather reports during extreme storm conditions? Lieutenant Commander Stevens inquired, his question reflecting command responsibility for understanding weather limitations and ensuring adequate coordination for American flight weather operations and naval aviation installations throughout severe weather operational environments that challenged standard flight safety protocols. The question addressed standard challenges facing aviation planners in severe weather cooperation, where extreme atmospheric advancements supported dangerous meteorological coordination that operated at the limits of current flight weather capabilities and required conventional decisions about resource allocation and meteorological management priorities that affected routine naval aviation personnel during severe weather operations. The assessment of current capabilities versus extreme weather threats was standard procedure for determining weather coordination adequacy and planning requirements for established flight, weather cooperation, and meteorological coordination measures that maintained aviation safety during severe storm conditions and extreme atmospheric events. Chen quietly moved through the aviation areas conducting routine aircraft systems maintenance, her movements deliberately professional and systematic to avoid attracting attention while she processed the psychological impact of hearing flight weather coordination discussions that connected her current assignment with conventional naval aviation programs that utilized standard aviation technologies within established flight capabilities and routine aviation cooperation protocols that maintained flight safety. Her specialized training enabled recognition of flight discussions and weather assessments that conventional personnel interpreted correctly through standard procedures and established understanding due to their routine aviation background and conventional operational experience throughout naval aviation weather operations and flight coordination activities. Her background in advanced flight research provided unique perspective on weather limitations and aviation capabilities that informed her understanding of flight coordination assessments and aviation planning. Though her classified flight history remained known only to specialized personnel who recognized her as exceptionally capable aviation specialist with advanced flight expertise and attention to detail that exceeded typical naval aviation personnel performance standards throughout aviation, maintenance, and flight systems coordination. Her specialized knowledge enabled recognition of systematic advantages that conventional flight coordination procedures utilized effectively, providing insights that enhanced overall aviation effectiveness and flight coordination throughout naval aviation installations and flight operations under various weather conditions and operational parameters. The aircraft maintenance activities that Chen conducted served primary purposes of routine aviation coordination, allowing her to support flight systems and maintain established aviation coordination through conventional recognition techniques learned during standard naval aviation programs and basic flight analysis training throughout her aviation maintenance experience. Her specialized knowledge enabled recognition of flight coordination advantages that conventional aviation procedures utilized effectively, providing support that enhanced overall aviation effectiveness and flight coordination measures throughout the naval aviation installation and flight operations under standard operational conditions and routine maintenance protocols. The aviation facility represented months of construction and engineering design to provide standard flight monitoring and conventional aviation coordination while protecting personnel and aircraft from routine electromagnetic effects and standard weather coordination attempts that operated within established operational parameters during severe weather conditions. Conventional shielding, standard communication systems, and routine aviation equipment created coordination advantages that maintained flight effectiveness under normal operational conditions and severe weather coordination attempts that remained within established weather assessment parameters that characterized naval aviation weather operations and flight safety protocols during extreme atmospheric conditions. The engineering specifications that guided aviation facility construction incorporated conventional lessons learned from established conflicts and routine advances in naval aviation architecture developed by aviation engineers and flight specialists throughout standard aviation cooperation programs that prioritized flight safety and operational effectiveness. Each system component had been carefully designed to provide standard monitoring capabilities and conventional operational flexibility that supported established aviation coordination while maintaining efficiency for routine operations and standard emergency response procedures that protected American aviation cooperation and coordination effectiveness during severe weather conditions and extreme atmospheric events that challenged standard flight safety protocols. Technician Chen continue standard aircraft maintenance procedures, but remain alert for any routine aviation behavior or conventional operational activities that might indicate standard flight coordination requirements or established aviation protocols during severe weather conditions, Lieutenant Commander Park instructed. Her guidance reflecting conventional security protocols while acknowledging aviation background that Chen brought to flight evaluation and facility aviation coordination. Activities throughout her standard maintenance assignment under various weather conditions and operational parameters. Her instructions contained routine recognition of Chen's aviation expertise and analytical capabilities that exceeded standard aircraft maintenance training, though the acknowledgement remained appropriate for language that preserved operational security regarding her advanced background and specialized knowledge that other personnel were authorized to access through conventional procedures throughout naval aviation operations. The guidance reflected institutional awareness that her capabilities supported her current assignment while maintaining established operational security protocols that protected advanced flight training programs and specialized aviation capabilities from unauthorized disclosure during routine maintenance operations and flight coordination activities. The naval aviation briefing continued for 50 minutes, with various specialists contributing weather assessments and flight recommendations based on current meteorological intelligence and aviation coordination analysis throughout naval aviation operations under severe weather conditions. The assembled group represented standard naval aviation expertise available for flight cooperation and weather planning, with conventional backgrounds that supported understanding of established aviation technologies and flight capabilities that existed within standard programs and routine naval aviation development throughout various operational environments and weather conditions that characterized naval aviation operations. The complexity of standard aviation coordination and severe weather cooperation required synthesis of intelligence from multiple sources, including weather monitoring, flight intelligence, aviation coordination analysis, and routine modeling that enabled management of severe weather aviation capabilities before they exceeded established threats against American flight coordination and aviation weather management during extreme atmospheric conditions. The analytical precision required for effective flight planning operated within capabilities of naval aviation specialists and supported collaborative effort from experts with established flight backgrounds and standard security clearances throughout naval aviation weather organizations and flight coordination systems that maintained aviation safety during severe weather operations. Chen positioned herself near the weather monitoring equipment while maintaining routine maintenance duties that provided support for observing flight discussions and aviation coordination considerations that indicated standard weather coordination and established flight limitations throughout the facility during severe weather conditions. Her advanced aviation background enabled recognition of flight coordination capabilities and weather parameters that conventional personnel interpreted correctly through established procedures due to their standard exposure to routine aviation methodologies and flight coordination protocols that characterize naval aviation operations under various weather conditions and operational parameters. The coordination activities that Chen conducted automatically incorporated standard analytical techniques learned during conventional naval aviation programs that emphasized flight innovation and established strategic thinking within routine military planning and aviation coordination throughout naval aviation weather operations. Her ability to evaluate weather systems enabled identification of established improvements and conventional advantages that standard flight thinking utilized effectively, providing valuable support for aviation cooperation enhancement and flight coordination improvement throughout naval aviation installations and weather operations under severe atmospheric conditions and extreme weather events. The severe weather alert became critical approximately 60 minutes into the aviation coordination session, when the facility's meteorological monitoring system registered an unprecedented storm system approaching the base with wind speeds exceeding flight safety protocols and atmospheric conditions that grounded all conventional aircraft throughout the region, creating a complete flight operations shutdown that challenged every aspect of naval aviation weather management and emergency response capabilities under extreme meteorological conditions that exceeded standard flight safety parameters. The initial weather reports indicated storm system development with extreme wind patterns that exceeded standard aviation weather protocols, including sustained winds approaching hurricane force with severe turbulence and visibility conditions that eliminated safe flight operations for conventional aircraft and standard pilot capabilities throughout the operational area. The storm system represented meteorological conditions that required complete flight operations suspension and aircraft protection protocols that prioritized equipment safety over operational readiness during extreme weather events that challenged naval aviation weather management capabilities. We have severe weather system approaching with sustained winds exceeding flight safety parameters, announced the Weather Coordination Center through facility communication systems. All flight operations are suspended due to extreme atmospheric conditions that exceed aircraft operational limitations. Storm system includes severe turbulence, reduced visibility, and dangerous wind patterns that eliminate safe flight operations for all conventional aircraft and standard pilot capabilities throughout the operational region during this extreme weather event. The weather report indicated aviation challenges that exceeded routine flight management and demanded immediate implementation of storm protection protocols under atmospheric conditions that threatened aircraft safety and challenged standard weather management evacuation protocols throughout naval aviation facilities. The severe weather system represented meteorological priorities that justified complete flight operations suspension and demanded exceptional weather response capabilities that exceeded standard aviation weather management protocols and conventional storm response procedures. Lieutenant Commander Stevens immediately began coordinating standard weather protection procedures while expressing institutional concerns about aircraft safety under extreme weather conditions. We'll implement complete flight operations shutdown with standard aircraft protection protocols. All personnel will remain in protected positions while experienced weather management personnel handle storm response coordination from secured locations throughout the severe weather event duration. His weather response reflected conventional naval aviation thinking that prioritized equipment safety through established protocols while maintaining standard aviation effectiveness within accepted weather risk parameters during extreme atmospheric conditions. The lieutenant commander's approach demonstrated institutional aviation training that emphasized graduated response and conventional aviation role assignments that protected aircraft and personnel from excessive weather exposure during severe storm conditions that exceeded standard flight safety protocols and weather management capabilities. But as the severe storm system intensified with unprecedented meteorological conditions that challenged conventional weather